The text came at 2:14 a.m., 3 words from an unknown number. Check her posts. No greeting, no signature, just a cold summons into someone else's truth. The kind of message you don't get by accident. I sat up in bed, blinking at the glow. My phone felt heavier than it should, like it knew what was coming. I swiped the notification away once, then pulled it back up, thumb hovering over the link they'd attached. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the kind of silence you start to notice when something is about to break. It opened to a grainy photo. Low light, crowded background, the kind of scene that looked harmless to anyone who wasn't me. She was at a bar leaning in toward a man I had never seen, their shoulders angled in as if sharing something just out of earshot. His face was turned mid-laugh. Hers was sharper, like she had just said something meant for him alone. The caption was throwaway. Some generic line about catching up, no hashtags, no emojis. But my eyes didn't stay on the words. They found her hand. She was holding a pen, a silver fountain pen with a fine nib and a small scratch along the cap. My pen. The one she had borrowed for a meeting 6 months ago and swore she'd misplaced. I'd accepted it then because you accept those small things when there's no reason to think you're being misled. I hadn't seen it since. Until now. It wasn't the pen itself that tightened my chest, it was the fact that she'd brought it there. To that moment, to him. I zoomed in on the photo until the pixels broke apart, studying the way her fingers curved around it, casual like it belonged to her now. The man's hand rested on the table too close to hers for coincidence. I scrolled through the rest of the tagged images. She was in a few, always just out of focus, always near him. Not posed together, that would have been too obvious, but close enough for a pattern. Whoever sent me the message had chosen that first photo for a reason. The clock on my phone read 2:21 when I locked the screen and set it face down on the nightstand. She was asleep beside me, breathing evenly, one arm draped across the blanket but not touching me. I lay there, eyes open, watching the thin strip of moonlight across the ceiling. I didn't shake her awake. I didn't ask who he was. The pen had already told me enough to know the answer would come rehearsed. Instead, I let the stillness stretch, the weight of those 3 words sinking in. Check her posts. They didn't say why, they didn't have to. Looking back, the shift had been creeping in for weeks before that 2 a.m. message. It wasn't a single moment, more like a string of small edits to the life I thought we shared. She'd started working late 2 nights a week, no specific deadlines, just vague mentions of extra projects. The first time she came home tired but chatty. By the fourth, she walked in with that crisp, untouchable calm that doesn't belong to someone worn out, it belongs to someone rehearsed. Her wardrobe changed, too. Not drastically, just sharpened. A different kind of polish. Trips to the store for basic errands somehow called for fitted jackets, subtle perfume, and hair done in a way I hadn't seen in months. She said it was about feeling put together, but it felt more like she was dressing for an audience I didn't know existed. Then there was the humming. She's never been a music person, always preferred silence, claimed it helped her think. But lately, she'd hum fragments of songs she'd never liked before. Sometimes I'd catch her tapping her fingers to a rhythm only she seemed to hear. I asked once what it was, and she just smiled like I was overanalyzing nothing. The pen kept showing up in odd places. First on the kitchen counter next to her coffee mug, then on the nightstand, half buried under a book she wasn't actually reading. Once I found it on the entryway table right beside her keys. Every time I saw it, it felt placed, not forgotten. Like it needed to be visible to remind someone, maybe not me, that it existed. She caught me looking at it one night and laughed lightly, asking if I wanted it back. The way she said it wasn't teasing, though. It was testing. I told her to keep it. She nodded like she already knew I would. There were other things, smaller but harder to ignore. She'd linger over her phone before answering me, thumbs still moving as she said she wasn't busy. She'd tilt the screen away when I walked by, not enough to look defensive, just enough to control the angle. Her explanations for gaps in her schedule were thin, not outright wrong, just lightweight, built to hold up only under casual inspection. The night before the message, she stood by the window scrolling her phone, the silver pen balanced loosely between her fingers like it was an afterthought. She was smiling at something she read, a kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. When she noticed me watching, the smile faded so fast it left a kind of static in the air. I didn't push. I just stored it away. Patterns are easier to see when you don't interrupt them. I'd started leaving the study light off at night, working by the screen's glow. Habit, not strategy, but it gave me a vantage point. Door, keys, the small pause before she stepped fully inside. That night she didn't call a hello. The door clicked, heels crossed the hall. She set her bag on the chair by the desk instead of the hook. I didn't move. The monitor dimmed. She still didn't notice me. She pulled the silver pen from the outer pocket like she'd practiced it a dozen times. Cap off with a soft snap, nib tested on her thumb, a dot of ink blooming on skin she didn't wipe. She slid a small folded card from her wallet, the kind cafes tuck into pastry bags, and set it on the blotter. The pen scratched quick lines, not a list, fragments. Initials, arrows a time, 6:10 crossed to 6:30. Her phone vibrated face down. She nudged it away with her knuckles, attention pinned to the page, not rushing, precise. My chair creaked barely. She stilled, then continued slower. She underlined twice, folded the card into a neat square, and slipped it not into her wallet but into a narrow inner zipper. Coat still on, shoes still on. Whatever it was, it needed hiding before she could pretend to settle. In the window's dark reflection she checked posture, not makeup, rehearsal for neutral. When she finally shrugged out of her coat, she draped it over the spare chair and rolled her shoulders once. "Didn't mean to wake you," she said, noticing the glow. Her voice stayed even, but the hand with the pen cap hovered a second too long. "You didn't," I said, matching her evenness. She offered the small professional smile she saves for strangers and capped the pen with a click that sounded like a lock engaging. "What are you working on?" Her eyes skimmed the monitor without reading. "Old files," I said, letting the cursor drift over a blank draft. "I'm going to shower," she added, placed like a placeholder. The zipper compartment faced away from me when she picked up the bag, the lift smooth, pre-measured. After the water started, I stepped to the desk. I didn't touch the bag, I didn't need to. The ink dot from her thumb had smudged onto the blotter, small and unmistakable, and a faint impression from the folded card left raised squares in the leather, 4 layers thick. The pen on the desk held a trace of her hand lotion. I set it where it had been. When she returned, steam followed. She moved as if nothing had happened, short steps, towel around her hair, phone face up but dark. "You're quiet," she said, more observation than concern. She slid the pen into her bag without looking. "Long day." "Long enough," I said. Long enough to notice that notes were being written before greetings, that hiding had become reflex, that the pen she once lost was now the first thing she reached for. It was all explainable if I wanted it to be. Appointments. A surprise not ready to share. A list for tomorrow. You can fit any story into a small square of paper if you fold it right. I let that comfort exist for one more night. On my screen, a notification blinked and faded, an unsuccessful sign in attempt to an old account we barely used. Could be a glitch, it often is. I hovered over it, then let it go. I wasn't collecting proof yet. I was collecting patterns. On her way out, she kissed my cheek. "You'll miss me when I start traveling again," she said, smiling without showing teeth. The proof didn't knock, it surfaced. I plugged in the old tablet I'd shoved under manuals. The screen lit and opened a cloud album we'd stopped thinking about. At the top sat a new reel, Motion Clips Auto. The newest file read 6:32 p.m. yesterday. I tapped. Café light washed the frame. She sat by the window, jacket on the chair, hair pinned to look casually precise. The table, a cup, her phone face down, and the silver pen angled toward her. She signed a small cream card with that pen, then slid it toward the man from the 2 a.m. photo. He leaned in. Through steam and plates I caught him say print. Her reply came low, "No, from this one." She rotated her phone a few degrees. The camera hunted focus and locked onto the window's reflection. In the ghosted glass her screen flashed my inbox, blue stars I use, a subject line I could recite from memory. My name, reversed and unmistakable, sat in the corner. She tapped the phone with the hand that held the pen cap, neat and practiced. He nodded once. I watched the clip again with the volume up. When the espresso machine screamed, she paused and half smiled, like timing her words for a convenient pause. When the noise died, she finished. "Send the draft from there." Logistics, not closeness. The card caught light. In the top corner she'd written numbers in a dotted stack, the way we format internal project codes. She didn't check her phone for them, she remembered. The pen left a small ridge where she pressed harder. Her phone lit with a badge, my initials under the mail icon, then went dark. He glanced, then returned to her. She turned the screen toward him, then away. Not enough to hide, enough to control. Choosing doubt is easy when the story agrees with you. Watching that, the choice got smaller. I could stack harmless explanations. A client, a card, a colleague. They didn't survive contact with the reflection. It showed my account open on her device, my markers, the edge of a draft I hadn't written. At the end, she uncapped the pen again. Second signature, second certainty, and blew on the ink, a habit she once teased me for. He laughed without sound, the kind of laugh meant for nearby tables. The clip ended with a small shiver as her phone shifted, stamping a location 3 blocks from her office. I didn't pace or script an accusation. I made a folder called Inventory, dragged the file in, then duplicated it to a drive she didn't know existed. The album held other fragments. Her hands, the pen, another café angle that briefly caught the blue header of an account security page, the kind that appears when credentials change. The date matched last week's alert I dismissed as a glitch. Patterns, not coincidences. Acceptance didn't crash in. It settled. The story I'd been telling kept its shape for one breath, then leaned. She had been careful, she had not. The pen kept time, the card became a hinge. My name glowed backward in glass. I set the tablet down and let the house say itself. The refrigerator hum, the heaters click, the rasp of my thumb on the desk. I texted no one. I composed no speech. I let the footage stand. Finally, I believed the message that woke me. Not just check her posts, but see what they point to. Then I opened my laptop and changed one recovery email. Then another. Small clicks, small locks, not retaliation. Clarity making room for the next move. The footage was a door, and once it opened, the rest stopped hiding. I pulled metadata from the clip, timestamps, IP history, location trails. Her logins bled into mine. Cached passwords, saved sessions in browsers she barely used at home. The first account was my work email. 2 unsent drafts lived there, identical in tone to my proposals but missing my phrasing, my errors, my shorthand. They'd been addressed to contacts I'd cultivated for years. The signature block was hers. Then came the access logs for our shared storage. Folders of pitch decks, budget notes, even early-stage strategies were copied in batches, always after midnight, always from her devices. She wasn't just passing glances at my screen. She was pulling files wholesale. The names tied to those downloads told their own story. The man from the Post was there. So was another I recognized only from a photo on her desk years ago, a friend she said had drifted away after college. The dates didn't match that drift. I cross-referenced the IPs with calendar invites in my archive. Meetings she'd scheduled for me on my behalf were actually overlapping with her coffee meetups. Every time my schedule bent, hers did too, just far enough to fit someone else in. The pen showed up in 3 more clips. Once next to a folder labeled with my client's initials. Another time poised above a sticky note while she read aloud from a message on my phone when she shouldn't have been able to unlock. The last was in a photo buried in my own gallery, taken by a device synced without my consent. It wasn't just one betrayal, it was layers. Professional, personal, digital. She'd built a net and wove it from the very tools I'd left open. I didn't call her out. Instead, I checked the edges of the net for fray. Old bank accounts I'd closed still had joint email recovery. I stripped them. My professional network logins same. I cut access. Quiet changes, each one logged on paper I kept in my desk, the list growing like a shadow map. That night she came home late, hair wind-tangled, coat unbuttoned. The pen was in her hand, uncapped, spinning slowly between her fingers as she told me about an exhausting planning session. She dropped her bag, sat on the couch, and opened her laptop. I watched the reflection in the black screen as she typed. Different window, different project, but my name still flickered in the corner. She glanced at me once, measuring before clicking away. Her phone buzzed. She read the message without touching it, then picked up the pen and made another neat note in the margin of whatever she was pretending to work on. I went back to my study, pulled the folder labeled Inventory onto an external drive and tucked it into the safe. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about anyone she'd pulled into this. The man at the cafe, the old college friend, whoever was on the other end of that buzz. Each file I saved was another thread cut. I didn't need her to admit it. I needed her to lose the net. And by the time I was done, she wouldn't even be able to find the knots she'd tied. 2 mornings later, I found her at the kitchen counter, hunched over a mug she wasn't drinking from. Her hair was unbrushed, a throw blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. When she looked up, her eyes were red but dry, no swelling, just the hint of something staged. "I need to tell you something," she said, voice soft enough to sound fragile but loud enough to carry across the room. "I'm not well." I waited. She let the pause stretch before adding, "The doctor thinks it could be serious. I'll need tests." Her hand tightened on the mug. "Maybe time off work." She didn't slide a paper across the table. No appointment card, no referral, just words. Her gaze kept darting counter, window, my phone on the table. When I picked it up, her jaw tensed almost imperceptibly. I asked nothing. She filled the gap herself. Mentions of hospital visits that didn't match the clinic hours I knew. Vague references to symptoms she'd never mentioned before. And under it all, a tremor in her sentences, not from fear, but from the effort of keeping them steady. The blanket slipped, revealing the silver pen tucked into the collar of her shirt like she'd needed to keep it close. She noticed me noticing and adjusted it back under the fabric. She reached for my hand, palm warm, grip light. "I don't want this to change things between us," she said. "I just need your support right now." It was almost perfect. Illness is an unassailable shield, demanding time, privacy, and space all at once. It excuses gaps in schedule and unread messages. It delays questions. It redirects attention. And in her case, it buys time. Time to keep copying files before I cut the rest of her access. Time to smooth over whoever I just stripped from our shared accounts. Time to finish whatever she'd started with the man from the cafe and the friend from years back. I pictured her laptop, the browser tabs she thought she'd hidden, the silent sync folders that kept pinging my accounts. She assumed the locks I'd changed were temporary. She thought a convincing illness could keep me from closing the last doors. I told her to rest, my tone even. She searched my face for pity, found calm instead. That seemed to unsettle her more than doubt would have. She pulled the blanket tighter and nodded like we'd agreed on something. When she left the room, I checked the timestamp on the last access attempt to my email, 8:07 that morning. I'd been in the shower. The pen was back on the counter when she returned, coffee mug full again, the weight of her new diagnosis already hanging in the air. She touched it once, almost absent-mindedly, and smiled faintly at me over the rim of her cup. I smiled back, not because I believed her, but because I'd already changed the last password before she even started her story. I didn't raise my voice, I raised a cup. Mid-morning, the cafe was full of quiet keyboards. Her business partner, Evan, arrived late, coat half buttoned. I'd chosen a table with no glass behind me. "She said you wanted to talk," he said, setting his laptop down. "Not talk," I said, sliding a small drive across the wood. "Documentation." He watched my face for drama and, finding none, plugged it in. The folder labeled inventory opened dates, logs, short clips. He clicked the cafe video first. The reflection, the cream card, my inbox reversed in the window. His mouth thinned. Recognition, not surprise. "Keep going," I said. He scanned access logs next. My accounts opened from her devices, drafts to his contacts using my markers. When he hovered over a proposal he'd praised her for salvaging, he drew a long breath. The timestamps matched. "You didn't write these," he said as fact. "No." He took notes without looking at his hand. "She's been leveraging your infrastructure," he said, choosing cool language. "And my trust," I said. "I'm not asking you to fix that, I'm asking you to look." He copied the folder, closed the laptop. "I'll address it with her," he said, "not comfort, procedure. In writing." "Good," I said, and left the drive. Third party meant the message wouldn't arrive in my voice. By evening, the house sounded different. She came in without small talk, set her keys down carefully, the silver pen clipped to her sweater like an emblem. She kept a hand on it as if turbulence could be managed by grip. "Busy day?" I asked. "Usual," she said, the word packed tight, a beat. "Did you meet anyone? A colleague?" Her phone, face down, buzzed once. She didn't flip it. She opened the fridge, closed it, stood still, looking for motion she could control. In the study, my screen chimed. I wasn't the recipient, just copied by the gravity of old threads. Evan to her, subject, action required. Bullet points, timestamps, attachments. The words boundary and access appeared 4 times. Final line, pausing, shared initiatives effective immediately. I said nothing. She stood in the doorway and studied my posture like it might offer a loophole. "You're quiet," she said. "You look tired," I answered. Both true, neither sufficient. She tried to smile the room back to a safer script. It didn't hold. Her thumb worried the pen clip until metal clicked once, then again, a small metronome for a performance that had lost lighting. "Anything you want to ask me," she tried, dressing the invitation as generosity. "Not tonight." I let the cursor blink. She moved down the hall, not to bed but to the closet with office supplies. A soft thud, the whisper of a bag coming down. When she returned, the pen was gone, as if removing the prop could retire the scene. A new block appeared in our shared calendar, personal, over tomorrow morning. 10 minutes later, it shifted to Evan's office with glass walls. He was keeping the conversation visible. I didn't plan to be near it. The reveal was already happening where it mattered. The person she'd counted on for cover had turned on the lights. She lingered at my door. "You'll miss me," she said, trying to reclaim an old line. I saved my draft, the click clean in the quiet. "I'm adjusted," I said. Her breath caught small, involuntary. She stepped back into the hall and let the dark take her. No storm, no closing argument, just gravity closing the scene. Fallout didn't make a scene. It arrived as absences, calls unanswered, invites unsent, her tone flattening. By noon, Evan's memo and a calendar sweep erased her from projects. She stood at the sink rereading each line as if repetition could change anything. The silver pen lay on the counter between us, horizontal like a boundary. The man from the post went first. He unfollowed, then untagged, then vanished from the crowd. I saw it in reflections, a removed comment, a story she posted and deleted, her thumb hovering and not pressing. At 11:14 a message flashed. "I can't be part of this," and she turned the phone face down before the preview finished. The old college friend followed the same path, only quieter. A draft contract bounced with an auto reply. She typed anyway, then erased it letter by letter, like erasing it would reset the whole chain of events. That night she tried a laugh that didn't assemble. Clients pinged me for clarity, not gossip. I kept replies short, scheduling, scope, and a line confirming I was the only point of contact. The calendar began to breathe. Our drives, now separated, stopped throwing 2 a.m. security alerts. In the hall mirror she practiced neutral. Her face learned it, her eyes didn't. She picked up the pen and set it down 3 times. The fourth she pocketed it, then took it out and aligned it with the salt shaker as if symmetry might restore order. She stopped mentioning illness. In its place, unopened mail and a to-do list that rearranged every hour. Precision without direction. After their glassed-in meeting, Evans sent a follow-up. Partnerships paused, disclosures filed, access revoked. She replied with paragraphs about misunderstandings, then one line. "I was going to fix it." Paper doesn't bend for intention. It only records. By Friday, the house had a museum hush. She hovered near doorways as if proximity could reverse decisions made elsewhere. Once I found her in the study looking at the empty spot where the tablet used to charge. She wasn't searching. She was remembering what it showed. We crossed in the kitchen that night. She held the pen the wrong way, capped toward the paper as if writing were mostly about appearances. "We could talk," she said, voice steady but breath thin. "About rebuilding." I watched water sheet off a plate and set it to dry. "There's nothing under construction," I said, "just cleanup." She placed the pen on the counter and nudged it toward me with 2 fingers. "You should have this back," she tried, careful the way people speak around breakables. I didn't move. Outside, a car door closed, punctuation. She waited for me to take the pen, to accept the implied reset. I let the moment expand until it had its own weight. The man from the post had become distant, then distant again until distant was the whole story. Her circle shrank to a screen she no longer tilted my way. The projects that borrowed my name slid off their hooks. There was no argument left, only arithmetic. I dried my hands and finally looked at her, not the pen. "Keep it," I said. "You've written enough." She blinked. The pen stayed where it was. She stepped back, precise, like someone learning her badge no longer opens the door. I switched off the kitchen light. Down the hall, her phone lit and went unanswered. Silence kept doing what it does best, removing what doesn't belong, and I let it work without helping.